we have a special guest tonight. We have a Libertarian candidate for Congress, Dave Macko, and I'm sure he's itching to get in on the conversation. So I'm going to bring him on right now. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. As I stated before, when I ran for Congress in 2008 and 2012, and when I ran for state representative in 2010, I will never vote to impose any more gun laws or restrictions on the ownership, possession, and use other than murdering people or robbing people of any weapon or ammunition. If I'm elected, I will vote to cut off all funds to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and as soon as possible to abolish it. I favor the repeal of all federal gun laws, starting with Roosevelt's tax on machine guns. Infringement means infringement. There should be. I don't believe there should be any taxes on weapons or ammunition.
What do you think of the whole? What do you think of the whole Connecticut thing? These gun owners are being asked to turn in their guns because they didn't register.
I always thought if electoral means failed, that the first actual conflict would start in some place like Montana or Idaho or Wyoming or Texas, but it's beginning to look as though Connecticut may take that honor as Massachusetts did on April 19, 1775. Now, I believe, let me make myself clear, as politicians say, I favor electoral solutions. In fact, I'm trying to promote a slogan, vote Libertarian, so we don't have to shoot the bastards. But I hope that goes through. But again, we make light of it a little bit because we have to maintain our mental equilibrium. But this is very, very serious. Anyone who wants to take away your weapons and your ability to defend yourself is saying to you that he does not care if you are killed, robbed, or raped if you're a woman, or tortured and taken off to a FEMA camp. The last line is when you are if you are being taken to a FEMA camp, a concentration camp. Your choice then is to live or die, and anyone who you need to take out, that's totally morally right. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, in his book The Gulag, described on how the people would cringe in their apartments at night as they heard the secret police come knocking at doors and taking people away. And he said, if we had only united them, got together, so that we would make it clear to the KGB, or whatever the KGB was called then, so that they would know if they went out to commit an atrocity, they weren't sure if they were going to come back alive. That's the only way to stop it, other than voting Libertarian, so we don't have to shoot the thrown person.
Right. Well, go ahead, Mike.
If I could say one thing, and I've got proof to back this up, and I'll put it on my Facebook tonight. Okay. The one misconception Americans have, you know how they got those letters, Rob? Can I tell you how Connecticut knew who the gun owners were? Every time you purchase a gun through a gun dealer, okay, any gun through a gun dealer, gun shop, like a Dick's or even your mom and pop shop, they have to submit paperwork, okay, on what was sold. The ATF has a database of that, and the way I know that is I get a government magazine every month for IT things, okay, computer things, and it's telling me how all 50 states now are linked up with a gun database. What's that gun database? Well, the gun database is the one that the ATF has, on all gun owners. So that's how they know what the letters are. Or, who has the guns. To send the
gun database is part of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. It needs to be destroyed, and as I said, that unconstitutional bureau needs to be abolished. And if it can't be abolished immediately, 218 members of the House of Representatives can stand up and refuse to fund it if they have any guts.
Yeah, but Mr. Macko, if you recall, this did not start in Connecticut. This started in Waco. This started in Ruby Ridge, okay? As much as I don't agree with, the religious Sultan followings of the gentleman, I think his name was Koresh.
David Koresh, yes.
He had a right to keep and bear arms, and the ATF was upset that he had over 200 rifles with about 100,000 rounds of ammunition. Well, here's the thing with that, okay? They went and attacked the guy, and they said, "Oh, he's a child molester. He's this, he's that," which all of them said no. And then it came to find out that the ATF started the fire and killed the kids.
He was deliberately lured. He was willing to come out of the Mount Carmel church and housing area, which the enemy calls a compound, voluntarily. The feds could have held him for questioning while he was jogging. They deliberately did this to kill him. Now, he may have had delusions about himself, but practically all the leading people in the FedGov think they're God, too. So,
right. Well, the whole point is it started a while back ago. And, unfortunately, it's just something, we have to watch, and we have to inform people and educate people. In Colorado, now in Texas again. Unfortunately, because of Waco, Texas now take pride in carrying guns. They're actually a very pro-gun state. So is Colorado, so is a lot of your western and southern states.
Yes.
I think what's going to end up happening is, and I think that's another subject Rob's going to tap on later, the country is going to become divided. The people who own guns are going to come to states like Ohio and Georgia and Texas and Florida. The people who don't like guns are going to go up to Connecticut and, New Hampshire and all those, what they call New England states. And then, I don't want to see this, but, maybe in 50 or 100 years, we'll have a situation as they have in Ukraine, where we just, they want to go their way, we want to go ours. Just never know.
I wish I could be as optimistic as you are, Mike. I think this is going to come to a head a lot sooner than 50 years.
Well, the thing is, Mr. Macko, the reason why I'm optimistic is this, okay? Most of the police officers I know are gun owners. As you've seen in Connecticut now, majority of the National Guard, patrolmen, state troopers, and the local police are saying, you know what, we're going to resign. We're not going to go to people's homes and take their guns because we are gun owners too. And I'm pretty sure this is what's going to happen if the Kalaba, I want to call it the Kalaba of, gangsters ever fully take the country over and they go for a gun grab. I think that the Army will refuse because the majority of the Army is already pretty. Yeah. The majority of the Army is already pretty, anti-government.
I believe you're correct. They're waking up. Well, the people in the Army who are ordered to train at capturing American cities, like this $100 million city the FedGov built in Virginia. They see this happening. It's not patriots such as Robert or nationally known newscasters such as Alex Jones who tell the truth. They're seeing it firsthand.
And what are they doing, Mr. Macko? They're recording it and putting it on the internet for everybody to learn.
Yeah.
So that's resistance right there. So that's why, like I told a bunch of my fellow patriots here in Ohio, okay? I told them like this. I said, I hope they arm the police with tanks. I hope they arm the police with rocket launchers because I'll guarantee you the police I see every day and every week, not because, I'm in trouble, because I do work with FOP, they're the ones that are going to be having this heavy equipment and calling me over to say, hey, you know what? Our government's become a tyrant. We refused our orders, and now we have the hardware and the ammo to protect ourselves. The police will be on our side. Now, will you have 20, 30% follow orders? You bet. But I think half or the majority are going to side with the people.
Well, during the first American Revolution, the King of England brought Hessian mercenaries here. If the FedGov manages to buy off some mercenaries now, their wives and children are right here too, and their homes are right here too. And I think they'll have to think about that.
Why is the president gutting the Army? Ask yourselves that. Why does he want to make the Army so small? Because the Army will not, if ever the Army is given orders to disarm American citizens, the Army will not comply. That's why they're going to put the Army to, minimum troop level.
Well, That's why they're building a DHS and minimizing the military.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I do have to disagree with you regarding the U.S. military situation, and you're putting me in a really horrible position that I hate, which would be to seem to appear to defend Obama. There is no reason for us to have such a huge army. We should bring our troops home from all over the world, use as much of it as necessary to defend from invasion, especially on the southern border, and we can probably do it a lot less. Also, the actual spending amount is not going down because the funding for the military-industrial complex, including many weapons which are not necessary. In fact, the current issue of Ron Paul's Texas report, which you can get easily on the Internet, points out that the actual spending is still going up, which is ridiculous, because we spend more on military spending than the next dozen countries of the world, and that includes Russia and China and other countries such as Britain and France, which I don't think are going to be our enemies in the foreseeable future. So I hate to defend put in the position of appearing to defend Obama. Another thing I will do if I'm elected, I will vote to impeach Obama for treason, murder, and other war crimes, and attempting to set up a dictatorship by shredding the Constitution.
Well, Mr. Macko, you're right. So here's what they're going to, here's what's happening, okay? They're moving the money from personnel and technology. What that means is your drones and your robots, okay? You will not have a human being left in that army if they have their way with a conscience, okay? You'll have these robots and these drones controlling with a small group of people. That's where the money is going. The defense industry will always make its money. You are right about that. But they're not going to spend it on people. They're going to spend it on tech, drones, and robots, and cyber defenses.
Okay, we must never allow a situation where there is not some human being who is responsible for committing any war crimes which are committed by the weapons, whether they're robots or drones or whatever.
Right.
There has to be a human being who can be held responsible, who can be tried for treason and making war on the American people, and who can be executed if found guilty by a jury of his peers.
Right, you are correct, but here's what the issue is with that, okay, Mr. Macko, I agree with you on that. The issue is, look at our. Can I mention a federal senator, Rob?
All right.
Mr. McCain out of Arizona, okay. For instance, he did business with the Kosovo Liberation Army, who in return are child traffickers. They put children in the brothels, okay? Is that not an accomplice? Why have we not charged him yet with crime of international human trafficking? Because here's why. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say because the Demo-Republican duopoly protects its own. That's why the Democrats wouldn't impeach Bush. That's why the Republicans won't impeach Obama.
They don't want to. You're right. They don't want to air out their dirty laundry, as we say. They know what happened. I think they're ashamed of it, but they don't want to air it out to the public. It's like for many years, an organization does something bad. Oh boy, it's already found out, and to go public, the organization is going to protect itself, because then they're all going to look guilty. So.
Yes.
Well, this is a great conversation, guys. Please continue.
That's my take. You have a lot of criminals and a lot of organizations throughout the country. That's why I always advise Robert. I like politicians with good character. Okay, that's number one. If the man or woman has a good character, that flies a lot with me personally. I might not agree with them on every level of their thinking or their opinion, but if they agree with the Constitution, I'm good with them. So that's like in the Army. In the Army, you have no right to refuse any direct order that violates any international or army laws, for instance. And there was a few people that they would make a big stink about it and say, you know what, this is going against international law. I want transferred out of here, or I'm gonna sing, for instance. So you always have an option.
Speaking of that, let me play something for you real quick. This is Secretary of State John Kerry.
Oh gosh.
Oh, wait until you hear what he said. Now we've all heard of Smedley Butler, right, Mike?
Right.
Dave?
Right.
Yes.
Listen to what Kerry says right here at the end.
Well, David, I would have to say there has been a quiet but complete Russian takeover of Crimea. Their troops are guarding key buildings here in the capital, and the latest is that several hundred Russian troops have arrived at a Ukrainian military base not far from here, where there is now a confrontation. The Russians are demanding that the Ukrainians lay down their weapons and their threatening force, and a group of Ukrainian guards are behind the gate looking frightened. There's not much they can do about it. It's not a confrontation at the minute, but it's certainly a standoff, and that's pretty typical. The Russians, as you say, have certainly taken over this region of Ukraine.
Bill Neely on the ground force in the Crimea area. Bill, thank you very much. I'm now joined by the Secretary of State, John Kerry. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Glad to be with you. Thank you, David.
So for the past 10 days, administration officials and the president himself have basically said to Russia, don't do this or else. Here just Friday, the president laying it out when he spoke to Vladimir Putin.
The United States will stand with the international community in affirming that there will be costs for any military intervention in Ukraine.
Now you've called this an invasion, so what are the costs?
Well, we're now discussing all of the options. This is an act of aggression that is completely trumped up in terms of its pretext. It's really 19th century behavior in the 21st century, and there is no way to start with that if Russia persists in this, that the G8 countries are going to assemble in Sochi. That's a starter. But there's much more than that. Russia has major investment and trade needs and desires. I think there's a unified view by all of the foreign ministers I talked with yesterday, all of the G8 and more, that they're simply going to isolate Russia, that they're not going to engage with Russia in a normal business-as-usual manner, that Russia is inviting opprobrium on the international stage. There could even be, ultimately, asset freezes, visa bans. There could be certainly a disruption of any of the normal trade routine. There could be business drawback on investment in the country. The ruble is already going down and feeling the impact of this. And this is not, the reason for this, David, is because you just don't invade another country on phony pretext in order to assert your interests.
What do you think about that, Dave?
Well, first of all, we should remember that John Kerry was the Skull and Bones Class 66 member who ran in the 2004 election against the Skull and Bones Class of 1968 member George Bush. I believe Kerry is 66 and Bush is 68. The information we're getting from the establishment media regarding Ukraine, like almost everything else, is a mostly total lie. The Obama regime has been meddling in Ukraine, trying to separate its economic relations from Russia and put its economic relations under the European Union, which is more communist than Russia is right now.
Well, I'm gonna get into this with Mike a little bit later in the show, but because Mike is from that area, Eastern Europe, and
family.
Right, and I want to get into that, Mike, your origins and everything else.
My grandparents came from what is now Czechoslovakia. They were of Russian origin or Carpatho-Russian. So there's some
maybe Maybe we'll get you both involved in this then. But
okay.
I want to go to a commercial break, but I want you to ponder this while we go to commercial. Does this have anything to do with the promise that was made by Obama to Putin that I'll have more, I'll be able to do more after the election? Remember the hot mic back in 2012?
Yes.
We'll come back to this after the commercial. Stay tuned.
Obamacare. Fun. Cool. YOLO. At Obamacare, we believe in saying the words affordable health care so that young people will love us and sign up like lemmings. Sure, you pay 2.5% of your income in penalties, but young people don't have to worry about that because you don't have a job. Work sucks. That's why we at Obamacare want to trade your full-time job for a part-time one, so you'll have more time for fun things, like watching millionaire celebrities tweet about how affordable we are. Obamacare. Just like guys enjoy premium leather seats, so too you'll enjoy paying triple the healthcare premiums out of your new part-time salary. Speaking of guys, ever been on a mandate before? At Obamacare, we're full of mandates. But don't worry, big corporations get exempt, so you don't have to. It's fun paying for things you don't even use. Yeah, you work out, stay healthy, but come on, brah. Someone's got to pay for people who smoke, drink 85-ounce sodas, and live in a Barca lounger. So enjoy your premium hikes, young people of America, because everyone loves hikes. Obamacare. If millionaire celebrities can afford us, why can't you? A message from the White House Office of Obamacare. Propaganda to get young people to love us and sign up like lemmings.
And on the 9th day, God spilled some coffee on an angry possum, and God made a liberal. God said, I need someone willing to get up at the crack of noon and check their Facebook and tweet vile things, take a nap, borrow money from their parents, and stay out all night drinking Pabst ironically and snorting bath salts and wine until midnight. So God made a liberal. He said, I need a person that can take a thriving community and turn it into a debt-ridden post-apocalyptic welfare state. I need someone who thinks meat is murder, produce is raised in grocery aisles, who can't fix a flat tire or change her own oil, and who, when forced to finally get a job as a barista, makes you wait for your latte while they play Angry Birds on their iPhone and then takes his union-mandated 2-hour break. So God made a liberal. God said, I need somebody dumb enough to believe in global warming and deficit spending, yet arrogant enough to look down at hard-working folk because they don't have a worthless Ph.D. in 17th century Belgian lesbian studies. It had to be someone that would tax and spend, sue and attack, flip and flop, legislate from the bench and pass an unread bill, a person that would take a story of American success and turn it into a lesson of injustice. So God made a liberal. It had to be someone who'd lie to themselves and others and envy the successful, someone to whine, cry, demand, screech, and scream sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, bigot. It had to be someone that at the end of the day they could go home after helping rip apart a country with divisive race and class war, and who would laugh and then sigh with mocking eyes, thinking, if I hadn't aborted all my children, they'd probably say they want to spend their life doing what Dad does. So God made a liberal.
All right, we're talking with congressional candidate for the 14th District, Dave Macko, and my co-host, Mike. Dave, let's get into this. Back in 2012, Obama promised Putin that, hey, I'm going to have... Hello?
I know this is going to... I know this is going to come as a shock to the listeners who have studied the situation, but I believe Obama lied. He's not helping. He's not helping Putin. He's not helping Putin. He's setting up a situation more likely to lead to World War III.
Well, that's what they want. I mean, if your currency is worth nothing, what is the best remedy? Go to war, right?
Mm-hmm. Distracts the people. They let down their natural barriers against the government, such as are still left. War is the health of the state, as Randolph Burns stated, and as Smedley Butler stated, that war is a racket unless you're defending your homes and the Bill of Rights. So,
Mike.
Hey, Rob, listen, I'll make three fast. First point is, Albrecht, Clinton, and the rest of the Democrats said in Kosovo, well, Kosovo's majority is Albanian descent, so Kosovo should be their own country. Okay, well, guess what, world? Guess what, Mr. President? The majority of people in eastern Ukraine are Russian. Crimea is 70% Russian. They want the Russians there. They want to be a part of Russia. Now let democracy work and let them do what they want to do and not butt our nose in it. Number two, okay, if European Union comes in, and I will tell you something, what I saw in the streets of Ukraine, those protesters were armed with Kalashnikovs and rocket launchers, okay? Who gave it to them? Who gave it to them? Not their own government, the pro-Russian leader, but the European Union gave them the guns, okay, to cause this mess. And the reason being is the Russian government or the Ukrainian government would not go with the EU banks, okay? They stayed with the Russian banks. Go ahead.
And Mike, you're absolutely correct, because the Ukrainian groups over there are raising Russian flags.
Right.
Yes.
So what happened is Ukraine, the new leader said, you know what, Russia, forget that we owe you $15 billion because you loaned us $15 billion of your own money. We're going with the European Union now. I'll tell you something. If somebody came and stole my money, $15 billion, to cause my country to go into default because I was being a good neighbor, I would be a little ticked too, okay? And I would go help my, the so-called people that wanted me there. And number three, the president there now is illegitimate. We have to ask ourselves as Americans, okay? If somebody went to the White House, for instance, today, and I'm using an example, okay, and they pulled what they pulled in Ukraine, the majority of the country, my fellow Americans, would not recognize the new so-called president. That was an illegal coup. They did not follow Ukraine's constitution. Okay, we're a nation of laws, or we're supposed to be, okay, international laws. So why are these gangsters in Ukraine allowed to take over parliament, then allowed to take over and become a president? The president now was a convicted felon for gas monopolies. Did you know that? Yes. So it's all about the money, gentlemen, and I think you guys know that. And Putin just don't give a darn, because here's the end result. Okay, is Ukraine worth going over a nuclear confrontation for? No. Okay. No. They could say all they want in Washington. They could say what they want in Europe. Putin just delivered a message to the European Union. He told them, if you're ready, let's go. So he didn't threaten me.
Yeah, well, Putin is standing up for his country. He's also standing up for freedom, at least to the extent of allowing people sanctuary who are being persecuted by their own government, such as Edward Snowden. I know Putin has blood on his hands. He was a KGB colonel, but between Putin and Obama, I'd go with Putin. Also, this whole Ukrainian episode has been interfered with by George Soros, and he is not a friend of liberty. He was a Nazi collaborator as a youth, and now he promotes socialism and communism. So we need. This is another example of where we need to quit meddling. And Obama saying, talking about the peaceful demonstrators where they're actually killing members of the Ukrainian government who were defending the lawfully elected president. This is another example of where we need to stop meddling in the whole world, because both sides are going to hate us before this is over.
Well, did you hear did you see on TV, Mr. Macko, they were calling Putin a communist, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were saying he was a communist. Well, the TV lied. Do you believe that? I can't believe RBC lied.
Unless it's Ron Paul or Alex Jones, then I believe it lies. Yes.
Well, let me tell you, Putin, okay, he's Russian Orthodox, which is similar to Greek Orthodox, okay?
I'm Russian Orthodox too.
And what he does is he's a nationalist. He wants to bring the Russian Empire under the Orthodox cross. Okay, that doesn't sound like a communist to me, does it?
No, it's not.
Maybe I'm wrong.
No, it's
but
not.
look what these world bankers did to Yugoslavia. Okay, for instance, my wife. Okay, my heritage is from Montenegro. My dad was a Serb, came here when he was 3. Okay, my wife's Croatian. Now you think we wouldn't get along, right? But here's the biggest lie, gentlemen. The Serbs and Croatians and Muslims got along great in Yugoslavia. It was the TV that lied. It was the United Nations that came in and destroyed the people. Believe it or not, this is what they're doing in Ukraine now.
Well, the United Nations has always worked to create chaos for one world government. It did that in Katanga 50 years ago, the pro-Western Christian province of the Congo. We need to get the United States out of the United Nations and the United Nations out of the United States. That was a fine slogan when the John Birch Society created it. It still needs to be done, and if any of our listeners do not understand, just Google "Get U.S. out of UN" and you'll learn why. The UN has always been a force against freedom, against the rights of the people.
Dave, I have an honest question for you, and don't take this the wrong way at all. I'm just wondering, a man with your intelligence, why didn't you save us from Stephen LaTourette a long time ago and run as a Republican?
Because I don't have the stomach for it. For 60 years, the Republican Party has been taking its constitutionalist pro-liberty leaders from Robert Taft and Barry Goldwater through John Schmidt and Ron Paul, and it has been stabbing them in the back. Now, there's also a very interesting theory, and it's going to infuriate every Republican who has the guts to read it. When Robert's program is done tonight, go to your computer and Google Republican Party read from the start. It was an article by Alan Stang, a great patriot writer who passed away about 5 years ago. He wrote this about a year before he died. And he pointed out that the Republican Party has always been pro-communist, pro-big government from the 1850s when it was started. And many of the people who were responsible for the formation of the Republican Party were refugees from the communist revolutions of 1848 in Europe. This is history you don't get in your government school, surprise, surprise. But that's why I don't. I did vote for Barry Goldwater 50 years ago. First time I voted, I wasn't old enough to vote in 1960. I'm very grateful. If I had been old enough to vote then, I would have voted for Richard Nixon, and I couldn't say my hands are clean. I voted American Party or for the Libertarian Party. That's why I have not done that. Now it's being done this year. If the person who's doing it succeeds, well, God bless him. But
now, why do you?
Go ahead, Rob.
1 second, Mike. Why do you suppose? I think it's been 20 years now. Libertarians have not been elected to Congress. I mean, it's frustrating because y'all are great Americans.
Thank you.
And I just don't see the support. And I wonder why. I'm a Republican, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But
a good one.
I love you, Dave. I love you.
Thank you. That brings me into my next topic, which is the current ballot access situation for the Libertarian Party. The reason the Libertarian Party has, we've never had a person elected to Congress as a Libertarian, although Ron Paul is a life member of the Libertarian Party. At one time we had up to 8 state representatives. Unfortunately, we don't have them now. What occurs is that the two-party duopoly makes so much effort to keep us off the ballot by basically crooked and unconstitutional and un-American ballot access laws that we have to spend so much of our time, money, and energy on that by the time that those of us who survive to run in the actual election do so, we just don't have sufficient time, money, and energy left. And, of course, the constant propaganda from the enemy establishment media. oh, the Libertarians can't win. Don't, quote, waste your vote, unquote. That's that rubbish, that garbage, that nonsense. If everyone who said we can't win would help us win, we'd win. Now, here, let me give you the update, which hasn't been covered very well in the local establishment media in Cleveland, of course. We had attempted to get 5 of our people on the ballot in Ohio here. Charlie Earl for Congress, Steve Lineberry for Attorney General, Aaron Harris for Secretary of State, Bob Coogan for Auditor, and Dr. Mark Feldman for Treasurer. Now, everyone except Charlie Earl and Steve Lineberry was ruled off the ballot for insufficient signatures. Now, whether this is true or not, I don't know. But again,
I want to interrupt you for 1 second.
Yeah, there's more to.
Steve Lineberry, I could vouch for him. I've been friends with him for quite some time now, and I could tell you that he would make a great Attorney General.
Well, all of our candidates would make the best people in government for the last 100 years. When I was at the City Club in 2008, before they banned me, when they were afraid of me in 2012, I asked them, I told the audience and everyone listening on radio and TV, vote Libertarian. How can we do better? How can we do worse? How can we do worse? And this year I will say, vote Libertarian. We can definitely do much, much better. Okay, getting back to this ballot access issue, which is being used against us, and I believe most of these laws are basically un-American, actually. They're used to trap small alternate parties and make us spend money, whereas the big duopoly parties who get millions of graft in from all the agencies and people who benefit by their unconstitutional laws are able to donate a lot to them. Okay. Kevin Medler, our state chairman, is planning to run as a write-in for Secretary of State. He has to get 500 people to write his name in May. And I ask for a Libertarian ballot first and do that. That is very, very difficult. Bob Bridges, our state political director, is running as auditor, also as a write-in. Now, just last week, and this is public knowledge now, so I can talk about it, and I urge everyone to look up Ballot Access News on the Internet. Now, a individual right here in the Cleveland area, I'm not going to give his name, but if you want to read the information that Richard Winger of Ballot Access News provided and my comments on that site, he has challenged the petitions being circulated for Charlie Earl and Steve Lineberry on the basis that some trumped-up charge that the circulator was not a member of the Libertarian Party. This is the kind of entangling, hindering unconstitutional laws which are designed to keep the citizens of Ohio and the rest of the United States from voting for a candidate of your choice. Of course, everyone should have the right to vote, but what good is the right to vote if your only choice is between Hitler and Stalin? Your vote means nothing if you don't have a real choice, and that's a Libertarian on the ballot. So I urge everyone to go to Ballot Access News on the Internet after the show here tonight.
And Mike, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I want to let you go ahead and have your say, and then I got a question for Dave.
Sure.
Okay, I'll be real brief. Thank you, Robert. And sorry if I interrupted. Here's the thing, Dave. Pretty much, or Mr. Macko, me and you agree on a lot of things. Okay. The only thing is, see, I was born in a Republican family. My dad was what they call a liberal Republican. Okay. He believed in the Constitution, but he didn't believe in the mainstream conservative ideas that where a lot of them were put on TV. And my whole thing about it is, and again, I'm not going to say any names, I like being a Republican in the Republican Party because here's why. When you're a pinprick in somebody's butt and you see their face, it's worth $1 million. For instance, I asked a senator one time, I said, so you have a family? And he says, yes. And I said, how many kids? He says, well, a boy and a girl. And I said, how old's your son? He said, well, 13. And how old's your daughter? 9. And I said, oh, good, you're going to help me keep the United Nations out of New York, right? And he says, well, no, why would I do that? They're a peaceful organization. I says, well, that may be, even though I don't believe it, Mr. Senator. But I said, did you know what they're trying to push to allow your 9-year-old daughter to take birth control pills by herself without notifying you? To me, and his face was just stunned. And I said, are you going to let the United Nations come to your home and your family after giving a speech about holding your rifle and protecting your family and your home? I said, come on, let's do it. Let's get the United Nations out of here. He couldn't say a word to me. He was just stunned. The problem is a lot of the Republicans who run, either they don't know this information, as most of society don't, know, or they're too afraid to think about it, as most of society are. So that's why I like being a Republican. I mean, look at the way things are going in our country now, Mr. Mack. I could tell my wife, hey, let's pack up, let's go live in Russia, or let's go back in Macedonia or Montenegro, where, like you said earlier, they do actually have more freedom than we do here now. But I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna stay politically for the political fight. This is my country and I care for it. So that's why I stay Republican. So I
think
he's. Go ahead.
I think he's trying to convert you, Dave.
Okay.
No,
Rob. Michael, let me say to you and Bob and to Robert and everyone else listening who are trying to make the Republican Party, to turn it into a pro-freedom, pro-constitution, pro-national sovereignty organization, who are doing this, God bless you. I hope you all make it. I hope you're able to do it. I hope you succeed, even though people such as Robert Taft, Barry Goldwater, John Schmitz, Ron Paul, and many other great statesmen of the last 60 years and more have not been able to do it yet. However, if you do not succeed in that, I want all of you to know, and you should do as much as you can, just as you have an insurance policy if your house burns down or is blown away in a tornado, to do as much as you can to keep the Libertarian Party alive so that you do have another home to come to if you finally decide that you can no longer work within the Republican Party.
And Dave,
we're there for you.
Dave, I want to say this on air. You are my brother.
Thank you. I'm honored.
I honor what you do. I have many libertarian friends, and we welcome you anytime, and I'm sure vice versa.
Well, I'm glad to work with Republicans or anybody who's doing the right thing, like getting rid of the income tax, abolishing gun laws, getting the U.S. out of the United Nations, ending the unconstitutional wars, impeaching Obama. I'll work with anybody doing the right thing.
Mr. Mack, thank you very much for the invitation, and I might take you up on that someday. But for now, I want to invite the Libertarians, for once in their life, and only once, to register as Republicans for our primary so we can get Rand Paul in. Okay, because I see Rand Paul's making a lot of people in Washington mad, and that's the kind of candidate I like. So there's my invitation to you, brother.
Thank you. I'm not going to take you up on it now, but I honor your intent. And as for Rand Paul, he is a great patriot. He has learned much from his father. One other thing I wanted to say regarding the ballot access issue, the hearing on the charges against our petitioners was supposed to be tomorrow, but because Central Ohio is supposed to experience between 6 and 9 inches of global warming, that has been postponed until Tuesday.
Dave,
hopefully, if you have a show Wednesday night, and if you invite me on again, I'll be able to update everyone on what the Libertarian Party is doing.
Dave, now Republicans and Democrats are threatened by you. I, being a Republican, am not threatened. I think that more third-party candidates should be recognized. Now, what can people do listening to this show? What can they do to help you?
They can take a Libertarian ballot in May. This makes them members of the Libertarian Party. They can call me or email me to find out when I need people to help out at booths. The Solon Home Days will be on in July. I need volunteers for that. And, of course, if they really feel there's a chance, if they send me money, I'll be glad to take it.
As far as the hearing, though, As far as the hearing, though, what is that all about?
Hearing is to determine whether the petitions were circulated according to law. If enough petitions and signatures were not obtained according to the interpretation of the law by the Secretary of State's office, then you will not have a chance to vote for Charlie Earl for governor or Steve Lineberry for Attorney General.
And I would love to vote for Steve. Now, how do people get involved? I mean, where is the hearing at?
The hearing will be in Columbus. All the information is at Ballot Access News. That's I printed that out, I think. Let me look here. Well, just Google Ballot Access News. It'll come up. Ballot Access News.
Awesome.
You had a question for me. I'm interested in that.
Yeah, actually, yeah. We talked about the other day, and you touched on it a little bit. What would you say to a Republican? And this comes down from the top, and it trickles down, and then they all repeat it. When a Republican says, if you don't vote for so-and-so, then you're really electing the Democrat. What would you say to that person?
For 100 years, the American people have been choosing the lesser of two evils. Now, the lesser of two evils is evil. Every time the American people have voted for what they thought was the lesser of two evils, they've gotten evil. And now, of course, the situation is so bad that you can't even tell which is the two evils. I'll confess, in 2008, I thought Obama could not do much worse than Bush, but I was wrong. He's much worse than Bush, and his successor will be worse than him. So the lesser of two evils is evil. Elections are not horse races. You're not picking the best steed. Your proper purpose in an election is to vote for the person who you believe will most work to save our country, to stop World War III, to end the Depression, to end the police state.
And I have to ask you,
even if we're not going to win this year, you're still sending a strong message and making us stronger.
And I have to ask you, what are you had a chance to hear my friend Matt Lynch speak. He at least has the balls to run against Joyce. What do you think about him?
Well, he's good in many areas. He was one of the very few Republicans who voted against Kasich's bill to raise the budget 11%, even though the population of the state of Ohio and the official inflation rate is much less than 11%. So that's a point in his favor. Another point in his favor is that he voted against the John Kasich Reelection Protection Act, which would have taken the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, and other alternate parties off the ballot. I understand, and I'm not sure that he does want to have a constitutional convention. If that is true, and I have not heard it from his mouth.
Yes, that is true, and I disagree with that.
Now
also,
that is an area where we disagree. There may be there are amendments to the Constitution which are needed, and I'll be glad to talk about some of them. Most of them appeared in my campaign literature. but to give the American people to have a constitutional convention now, elected by remember, it would be elected by the same people who voted for William Jefferson Clinton twice, for George Herbert Walker Bush once, and for George W. Bush twice, and for Obama twice. I believe a constitutional convention elected by an electorate of that intelligence and information level would be just the same as giving a 5-year-old kid a match and saying, hey, go play there in that nitroglycerin factory. The results are going to be very bad.
You're absolutely right.
The only time we've had a constitutional convention was in 1787. That gave us the current Constitution. But that was influenced by people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, George Mason. Now we have people like the Clintons and the Bushes and the Obamas.
Okay, I have a question from a listener who does not want to come on air. He wants to know from both you and Mike, and I'm going to let you go first, Dave. What is their opinion on the split in the Republican Party while the Democrats are unified? 52% of American voters vote Democrat. The conservatives are split into many different groups, i.e. the Tea Party, Republican, Libertarian, etc.
Well, first of all, the Democrats are not as united as our listener seems to think. They're running like the ones who are up for election this year are running like heck from Obama. They don't want to campaign with him. They don't want anything to do with him. Obamacare is the kiss of death, as it should be. In the Republican Party, the split is between decent moral people who are trying to turn it into a pro-Constitution, pro-liberty organization, and the neocons, who used to be called Rockefeller Republicans 50 years ago. And you need to have that split. The good guys need to win, and they need to kick the bad guys out. So that's good.
Mike.
Oh boy. I think Mr. Macko's right. The Democrats are running. They are not united in private, but they are in public. When on television, the Democrats always praise Obama, but I will guarantee they're arguing in the back room with him. Now, on the Republican side, I really don't put myself with the group. And I'm not saying that because I'm a moderate and I play both sides or whatever. I tend to, I see bad from both sides. And unfortunately, I think that's what's going to kill us. Because at the end, any dispute should be held in private with each other within the party, as the Democrats are doing. So will they give the Democrats an advantage? You bet. Because I see Rand Paul coming up now, and just out of spite, a lot of these Republicans that might have, voted for him or liked him will not vote for him because, he's associated, with the Tea Party. So unfortunately, it's come down to that.
Well, let me bring this guest on to see if you have answered his question. Todd, I hate to put you on the spot, but did they answer your question?
Yes. Thank you, Robert, and very good show. Two esteemed guests there. You come at a bad moment, but I've been listening to the show with let me just get to the point. Yes, they did answer my question, but not to. I've been a Republican candidate, or not candidate, on the Republican ticket party since I was 18 years old. I'm 48 years old now, and I'm sorry I don't talk real well when
that's okay.
So just bear with me a moment. Especially when I get nervous. So, I'm just right now disavow the Republican Party and leaning towards libertarian. and I'm the one that was the caller who called in and asked Robert to ask that question about the Republican Party is split and the Democratic Party is unified. I mean, to the American public, and I understand what. I'm sorry, I believe it was Mike. If I can call you by your first names, Mike and Dave.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. I believe, Mike, you had mentioned that the Democrats, they appear unified on television, but that's what the American people are fed. So right. The American voters, that's what they're seeing in being fed down their throats. And what's happening behind the scenes is nobody knows. Well, the Republicans, in my opinion, the Republican Party, in my opinion, is even more in chaos because you have the Tea Party, you got the Republicans, you got the constitutionalist conservatives, there's just so many different breakoffs, and nobody can really kind of, libertarian, and nobody, and then so and the media won't cover any of that. That the average Joe, a television network, the MSM, mainstream media, and not doing any research, but they still vote. These people vote, and 52% of them, 52% are going to vote Democrat, and it's a unified party. It's not really split to the American public per se. Whereas the Republicans appear to be very split, even the way the media spins it and everything. So I will, with that being said, I will hang up now and let you comment. If
Thanks.
Or it's Robert's show, so he can do what he wants. But thank you for having me on there.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate it. All right, Dave, go ahead.
The most important thing to remember about anything, and that the source of knowledge, the beginning of knowledge, is the media is the enemy. The media is the enemy of the Constitution. The media is the enemy of the American people. The media is the enemy of the human race. Media is especially the enemy of white people and Christians. The media is the enemy. So you need to develop and use other sources of information. Robert, your show is at the local level here is good. Alex Jones, I consider as one of the chief sources of accurate information. The New American, the John Birch Society's magazine. American Free Press, which used to be the Spotlight. These are honest sources of information. They don't all agree. Nobody's absolutely perfect, but they're a whole lot better than NBC, CNN, MSNBC, and the other enemies of the human race.
Mike.
The gentleman is correct. That's what's going to kill us at the end, Rob. In the Republican Party, because we have, I've always been saying, what kind of conservative, I would ask different people, I'd say, what kind of conservative are you? Well, I'm just conservative. Okay, what the party or the media or nobody will tell you is there's different types of conservatives. And those different types of conservatives usually nitpick and argue and fight amongst themselves. And, it's split the party. Split the party, so.
Well, gentlemen, we have to go to another commercial. But we'll be back, and I'm going to lead out with this. All right, Dave, we're back.
Well, we should keep enough atomic weapons and missiles so that if it's actually threaten us, we can hit it and divert it from Earth. I believe that's technically possible. If it's not now, we would certainly be sensible to spend some money on that. That is a legit defense expense.
You know, I deal with the public on a daily basis, and I can't believe how dumb people really are. You'd be amazed. I mean, I have conversations with different people in different neighborhoods every single day. And sometimes when I'm driving down the road, I would like to thin the herd. It doesn't seem like such a bad idea to me sometimes. But, you know, we have to stand for humanity. We have to protect our fellow man, and that's what the Constitution's all about. And I want to get into that a little bit, Dave, but before I do, I want you to go ahead and plug your website and any meetings that might be coming up.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to mention that our next meeting of the Cuyahoga Libertarian Group will be at Denny's Restaurant on West 150th, just south of I-71, this coming Wednesday, March 5th at 7 p.m. If you want to eat, you should come at 6, but there's no obligation to order food. The meeting will start at 7. My new website is www.mackoforliberty.org. It is under construction slowly, but surely, so check it out every few days to see if something new has come up. I will have my computer guru will be putting tonight's broadcast on YouTube under David Macko YouTube, so check that out too. It's interesting also. But especially www.mackoforliberty.org. You mentioned the general educational level of the American public. The government schools have done the job for which they were created. In the pre-Civil War South, many of the states there had laws that do not teach the slaves to read or to write, so that they wouldn't communicate. And of course, they didn't want to teach the slaves mathematics, so they wouldn't know how much was being stolen from them. And they didn't want to teach the slaves any history to know that they originally were free back in Africa. The same thing is being done today by government schools. When I ran for state representative in 2010, I put forth my public education reform plan, which in 3 years would have solved every problem of the public, or more accurately, the government schools. So it would have abolished them. Congress has no authority under the Constitution to abolish government or public schools, but I will work, if I'm elected, to abolish the Department of Education and all federal funding and control of education, including Obama's Common Core plan. Now, there's a young lady who's in the state, a representative at the State Board of Education, Sarah Fowler. If you're able to, you should have her on sometime. She has become an expert. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I missed that. She has become an expert on Common Core, but I learned most of what I needed to know about, the first basic thing I needed to know about Common Core when I learned that Obama supported it. Now, for me, that was enough. But for the details and all the facts involved, she is a excellent source of information.
I got to tell you, she is a remarkable young lady. I'm actually friends with a cousin of hers, and we were able to get her on for a time. It was an excellent interview.
Mm-hmm. Well, you should have her on frequently. She is running again. Parts of her district do overlap the 14th congressional district. She beat two guys 2-1. 25-year-old homeschooled young lady. Schooling maybe the factor which saves this country.
And she had her own business selling eggs.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, of course, Obama would say she didn't build that by herself.
Right. She didn't build that chicken coop. Obama did.
Another thing about Common Core, they actually teach in one part, and I don't know how they justify it, and I don't know the background of it. They teach in part of the mathematics that 2 + 2 is 5. Now, if you have read 1984 recently, you should recall that when O'Brien was brainwashing Winston Smith and totally breaking his will, he had him say, at one point he said, if we tell you 2 plus 2 is 5, you will believe 2 plus 2 is 5.
That goes back to Plato's cave. And, something else in the mathematics of Common Core, I was actually able to see part of the curriculum. And there was a page in there, the question was, you had a picture of a box inside of a box, and then another picture of a smaller box inside of a box. And the question in mathematics was, how does that make you feel?
Okay.
Yeah. It's total nonsense. It's designed not to teach the mathematics, because if they know mathematics, they'll know how much the federal government, the state government, the county government, and their city or township village government is stealing from them.
Right.
Then we'd have a real tax revolt.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
You know what my answer to your question is? It makes me feel stupid for even looking at the box. Anyway.
Good point.
Common Core is bad. Okay, we all know that. I mean, heck, I talked to Miss Fowler one day, and I asked her, I said, when are you going to cause some ruckus at the board and tell them that in no way we're going to make Thomas Jefferson and George Washington terrorists? And she looked at me like I was a little crazy, maybe because she didn't know me, I don't know. But a lot of the Common Core, they're saying that Jefferson and were terrorists. I call them rebels, rebels of liberty. So, that's Common Core's bad. I don't like it. What it is basically is just to dumb people down. It's like you go in a lot of these communities and you ask the young people, hey, don't you want to feel pride and be a man? Go earn what you and buy what you have. No, everything to do is get the card and go get free money.
Well, I think we need to play the interview with Charlotte Iserbyt. She was one of the first people involved in the Board of Education, and the stories that she could tell are phenomenal. Dave, I believe you know who that is.
Charlotte Iserbyt was one of the officials in the Reagan administration. The interesting thing about these people, such as Mrs. Iserbyt and people like Paul Craig Roberts and Bruce Fine, was that all of them were eventually purged from the Reagan administration. She became deeply involved in seeing how the federal government is trying to totally take over education, which has no constitutional authority to do. Also, her father and possibly other relatives too were members of Skull and Bones, and she was the person who provided Anthony Sutton with the information for his book on Skull and Bones. A very well-informed lady. She's in her 80s now. I saw her on the Alex Jones show just a few months ago. She's a very impressive lady.
Now, Bruce Fine, the one you mentioned, the constitutional attorney, he was Ron Paul's constitutional attorney, was he not?
Yes, he was. Mm-hmm. So again, another case of the Patriot Constitution pro-liberty Republicans being purged.
And Paul Craig Roberts was the Assistant Secretary of Treasury? I believe
the highest the last high-ranking federal official who was on our side, really.
Right.
If you want to get right down to it. We were discussing the word conservative a little while ago, and I just wanted to point out I don't use the word conservative because it's been taken over by the enemy now, just as the word liberal was taken over by the enemy 100 years ago. If you want to conserve liberty, then you should call yourself a libertarian. If you want to conserve what's left of the Constitution and restore the rest of it, then you're a constitutionalist. But anyone who wants to conserve the present situation really have to say if they know what they're doing, they're either a communist or a fascist.
Well, the only problem I have with that, Dave, is I understand what you're talking about, but the average American doesn't understand what you're talking about.
Well, that's why we have to keep educating them. That's why I come on your show.
Well, let's educate them. Let's educate them on the word liberal. Now, the Founding Fathers considered themselves liberals. So if you could educate us a little bit on that, Dave.
A true liberal is one who believes in freedom, who believes that you should be able to do whatever you want as long as you do not initiate force or commit fraud against another person. And, of course, now we libertarians are the people who are the true liberals. Thomas Jefferson was a true liberal. Washington, in most respects, was a true liberal. Most of the Founding Fathers were true liberals. Now, of course, the term has been taken over by the enemy, and it's totally perverted to mean that if you're a liberal, you don't believe in freedom, you want to give the government total power and make people their serfs.
Mike, you care to chime in?
Actually, yeah, that's why I always call myself a liberal Republican, and a lot of people, they give me these dirty looks. I'm not a progressive. I don't think we should go forward to, make 9 and 10-year-olds go to clubs and date each other or whatever, to use birth control. I'm not about that. But what I am about is I'm about, freedom, and as I discussed, probably I'm being a dead horse now a lot because you probably know my thinking like the back of your hand. Mr. Macko, I don't care what 2 adults do in the bedroom. I don't care what, if people smoke grass or whatever. I mean, as long as they do it in their home and they don't push it on me and my child, that's their deal.
Exactly. That's true freedom.
Yeah, their maker will judge them accordingly. They got to answer, not me. So that's the whole point. Now, where I am a Republican is, and I know you're not going to agree with me on this. I'm for strong homeland defense. I don't mean homeland in the DHS style either.
Oh, well, excuse me. I believe in a strong homeland defense. I think we should bring all of our troops who are stationed in Afghanistan and Japan and Germany back to the United States, take as many as we need to defend our southern border especially. No, we need to defend this country. That's the purpose of the federal government. We don't need to be policemen of the world, and we certainly don't need to have the armed forces of the United States used against the American people to enslave us.
Exactly. Well, I'm for, strong national defense, troops at the border, technology to defend the United States of America. I don't like when we put our nose in other people's business because, like my dad always raised me, he says, hey, if your house is not in order, you can't go help your neighbor as good as your intentions, are. He said, your house has to be in order first. Then if your neighbor requests you for help, you look at the situation, and if it's something, where you don't get personal, like maybe a marriage or something, maybe the neighbor needs $100 to feed his kids for the month because he lost a job, then you help. But you don't tell the neighbor, I'm going to give you $100, and now you're my slave. So that's where we go wrong a lot with our, international policies. We have more.
$100 from another neighbor at gunpoint. You use your own money voluntarily.
Right, exactly. So I don't like how we're the world's policemen. That's what I liked about one thing. I will admit George Bush did right, and I'm talking about the father. Is when Yugoslavia started to collapse and fight, he was telling people on the television that we're not the world's policemen. James Baker, if you remember James Baker, Baker said, we're not the world's policemen. But then something happened, and George Bush father did a complete 180. So I'm thinking they had some blackmail on him or something. I don't know. It's like betrayal.
He may have been a one-worlder from the start. He was in Skull and Bones, too. The whole Bush family is a crime family. The Prescott Bush did business with the Nazis during World War II. So,
I think Prescott. Go ahead.
I want to ask you, Dave, while I got you on, what do you think of this guy? Let me play it real quick here.
You're saying no corruption?
No.
None. No.
There were some boneheaded decisions. Out of a
but no
office.
mass corruption.
Not even mass corruption. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Okay.
And in that light, Ms. Eckelbrett, did you hear the president say there was not a smidgen of corruption?
I've heard that he said that, yes, sir.
Ms. Garrison, did you hear the president say there was not a smidgen of corruption? And let me just translate that, because smidgen's not a legal term. I assume he meant scintilla, and I assume he meant criminality instead of corruption. How was he able to make that conclusion? Neither of you have been interviewed by the Bureau, have you?
No, sir.
And according to Mr. Sekulow, of his 41 clients, 3 have been interviewed, or 3 were asked to be interviewed.
Not interviewed yet.
Okay. 0 of 41 have actually been interviewed.
Correct.
All right. So the president says there's not a smidgen of criminality or corruption. Do either of you remember seeing a witness named Lois Lerner sitting at the very table y'all are sitting at? Do you remember her invoking her Fifth Amendment privilege, the same privilege that she targeted some of your groups for trying to educate people about?
I've been advised by my counsel to assert my constitutional right not to testify or answer questions related to the subject matter of this hearing.
Some of your groups just want to simply educate people about the Constitution, the one that she availed herself of the very second she was exposed to criminal investigation. So how can the president say there's not a smidgen of criminality when Lois Lerner invoked the Fifth Amendment? 41 witnesses haven't been interviewed, including the 2 that are here right now. How can he?
All right, that was Representative Trey Gowdy from South Carolina. What do you think of him, Dave?
He's one of the better ones. This is another example. Well, first of all, it's another example of why Obama should be impeached. He lies through his teeth. There's no corruption. There's nothing but corruption in the Obama regime. Also, it's another example of why the Internal Revenue Service should be abolished, why the income tax should be repealed. This is Obama has made it into an art, but it was designed from the beginning to promote corruption and to restrict liberty.
Mike.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, I agree with Mr. Macko. The thing about it is, she does have the right, because, you know, I believe in the Constitution, to, you know, invoke the Fifth. But what she doesn't have a right to is a job anymore. Okay, she doesn't have a right to live without being investigated.
Right.
So that's my take on that, brother.
I have another question for you.
She resigned the day before she would have been fired, so she could still get her pension. Now, if we had a Justice Department, it would prosecute her for her corruption. But of course, first we have to impeach Eric Holder for his corruption.
Well,
great point.
Now that you mentioned the Justice Department, did you know? Talk about police earlier, okay? Did you know the police have lost faith in the current administration and the Justice Department? And you want to know why? Because Eric Holder wanted to bring a cop killer or a attorney who loved cop killers on board at the Justice Department.
Well, he actually did.
Oh.
I believe he actually did that.
Oops.
I have another question for you guys. This comes from another listener. What would your guests suggest? Well, I only have one guest, but the other one is my co-host. What would they suggest to someone like me who is learning libertarian and going back over to the Republican Party? I am not an Alex Jones fan. I was not a Ron Paul fan. I hold conservative values. Like many Americans, I am lost between my values. I would rather listen to Rush Limbaugh than Alex Jones. What does that make me?
It makes him a lot less informed than he would be if he listened more to Alex Jones. Rush Limbaugh, especially when a Democrat administration is in power, does provide a lot of good information. But he will never attack the Federal Reserve System. He'll never attack the conspiracy. He'll never attack. He'll never go into details like the NSA. I don't know what his stance is on Edward Snowden, but if your stance is not that Edward Snowden is a hero who should probably become president in 2020, then you don't know what's going on. Alex Jones is not perfect, but he is so far, far above everyone else. He comes out with information, even the NSA spying. He was telling about that 8 years before Snowden confirmed it. So practically everything he says has turned out to be accurate.
Right.
It's like the John Birch Society. Everything the John Birch Society, and I am a life member, has been saying for over 50 years has turned out to be accurate.
Yeah, and that speech was given in the 50s from the John Birch Society.
Exactly.
I want to also play right now for a minute something that came up in Congress during the Oliver North trials that people just can't believe, but here it is.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir?
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was, but I wanted to get his
May I most
confirmation.
respectfully request that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
They're talking about Rex 84. Dave?
That is an abomination. First of all, if the Constitution is suspended, that means there is no more federal government. Picture a man on a gallows, rope around his neck. The platform is the Constitution. If you take the platform out, the man on the gallows, which is the federal government, will cease to exist very shortly.
Mike.
It's a total perversion.
Well, I can tell you there's 3 or 4 different places somewhere, I don't know where, I was never privy to them, that have actual working governments within them, just in the case of, some kind of event. I don't like it. Though I see a need to hide a so-called government in a bunker. But where I'm a little different, that so-called government in the bunker better still have a copy of the Constitution and follow it, just in case of, of a national emergency.
Right.
So,
I don't like all secrecy, but some secrecy needs to be in place. Some.
Maybe 1% of what we have now.
Right. I'm talking more, Mr. Macko, about, where the weapons stored that could, end humanity.
Of course, okay? Yeah, I don't argue that.
But whether or not the Iran-Contra affair needed to be a secret, no. The Kennedy incident, no. A lot of these things, they don't need to be secret. That's my point on it. And if I could just say about the caller earlier, I just want to make a real quick sentence because I know time is short. This is my advice to the caller, okay? I'm not going to judge you for, what you think or what you say. That's just, how I am. But I will tell you one thing. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So, if, I listen to Obama talk just so I know what he's saying. I know, what everybody, is, when I have time, I listen to both sides of the aisle. And the reason being is, or both sides of the conflict. And the reason being is, I like to know where they're coming at, where they're coming from, what they're trying to do. So the more you read, the more you listen to, the better informed you are to make a better decision. Go ahead, Rob.
Go ahead, Dave.
I agree with you, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I think this is the best place to leave off. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you, Dave, for coming on tonight. Hopefully
Anytime.
we'll be able to have a show on Wednesday. And I want to get more into the Ukraine, what's going on over there. Normally, I don't like to talk about international incidents, but this is important. is very important. So I want to get on that maybe Wednesday. But I want to thank you both for being here tonight. I want to thank the callers for calling in with their questions. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, God bless you all, and God bless America.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.